This is Ion Hong Kong with Key.
And this is Harminder, and we'll be discussing the top news for the week involving Hong Kong and China. And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Hong Kong, the 39th episode. I don't know if I mentioned that first part or not. But here we have Phyllis Cheung from Hong Kong Unison. And they deal with ethnic minority issues in Hong Kong. And their website is unison.org.hk. You can also find them on Facebook as Hong Kong Unison. Phyllis, thank you so much for coming in.
Hello, Vicky.
Hi.
Okay, so right off the bat, ethnic minorities in Hong Kong have significant issues, especially with education, employment, and integrating it into Hong Kong society. Right. In terms of the government, are you seeing any support from this administration? Because it's been noted since Tung Chee-hwa, there's been hardly any movement when it comes to the ethnic minority issues in the city. But has this government helped in any way to at least get education at the forefront with ethnic minorities, helping them in any way?
I would not say the government did not, because if you refer to the policy address in 2013, the government did spend over $200 million.
And if I could ask you just to move in just a little bit, so just outside the camera.
$200 million on education for ethnic minorities.
Right.
It's been a year and a bit. I mean, the new policy address just came out.
Right.
There has been a bit of mention saying that this program will continue. But actually, when we talk to teachers, schools, some administrators, we don't see the effectiveness of the program yet. Those saying education is a long process, but they have pushed out a Chinese language, second language curriculum framework, which expects schools to adopt. But so far, schools accepting a few ethnic minorities are not very clear about how this framework works. So I can't say if it's effective for now. And when you talk about integration into the society, there are about 6% of ethnic minorities in Hong Kong. It's a small percentage, but if you look at the number, it's about 450,000. It's a lot of people. Yes. And but you wouldn't see them everywhere.
No.
You wouldn't see them in your cha chan tang.
They're more clustered in certain areas.
Yes, they are. And Hong Kong Unison believes the root cause of the problem is language. Their language ability, the Chinese language ability, especially Cantonese, because this is what we use in our daily lives. And they have a big problem integrating because they don't get the right kind of pedagogy and the right kind of curriculum for these people.
So is a problem, because let's say Canada, United States, UK, kids are not segregated based on their language.
No.
Hong Kong is one of the only places, first world places I've ever seen where students are segregated based on their language ability.
Yes.
Now, wouldn't it be better if the Education Bureau introduced immersion from kindergarten for students so they can grow up with the language, the culture, the interaction with the Chinese community in Hong Kong?
This is what we've been pushing. The government has abolished this term, designated schools. There used to be about 30-some schools that receive designated funding from the government, from the EDB, that gives extra support measures to ethnic minority students. For example, I would say tutorial classes, after class tutorials, but that's not quite enough because they are actually learning the language similar to local Chinese, local ethnic Chinese students. I have been in Canada before, and I lived there for about 20 years. And when I first arrived in Canada, I studied, it was after Form 6 actually that I went. And they've offered me an English as a second language curriculum to study.
Right.
And though I'm only away from 1 year from getting into university, they would offer this course for non-native English speakers because the curriculum designed is very different. But there is no such provision in Hong Kong. All non-Chinese native speakers are expected to learn the way that native Chinese speakers are supposed to. And this is a big problem because you don't get support at home because your mother tongue is not Chinese, it's not Cantonese. Let's not talk
Sometimes
about
it's not even
Putonghua
English.
and Cantonese, okay? And sometimes it's not even English.
Yeah.
So the kind of support is different.
Again, could you just move in a little? Yeah. Towards us. This way. Towards us.
Towards you?
Yeah.
As in, like, move the chair.
Yeah.
Oh.
Here we go.
Yeah.
This is live. It's all good. This is the beauty of unscripted stuff here. Okay.
Okay.
So, if, let's say, they do learn Cantonese in Hong Kong, because I know some ethnic minorities and they speak fluent Cantonese.
They do.
But they are doing menial labor jobs still.
Right.
Even though they can speak English and Cantonese fluently, they're stuck in this bubble of menial labor jobs. Why is that?
Because a lot of especially for civil service, they require another written exam. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the system. Before,
explain it to us because some of the audience may not understand.
All right.
Yeah.
Hong Kong students, in order to get graduation, they need to pass the diploma of secondary examination, which is DSE, right?
Right.
And even Chinese local ethnic Chinese students, a lot of them fail. A lot of them can't pass this Chinese course because it's quite difficult, and let alone asking ethnic minority children. So Unison have been fighting for a long time, and a few years ago we got the permission from many of the higher institutions to accept GCE from London and IGCE. So in a way, and GCSE. So these are exams specifically designed for Chinese as a second language learners. So in a way, it's easier, but if they graduate with this GCE or GCSE, their level is usually of a local ethnic primary 2 or 3 level.
Right.
So with this level of work, with this level of Chinese, it's quite impossible for them to get a decent job, which requires a DSE acceptance. Yeah, and with a lot of the civil bureau services, the jobs there, they require candidates to write another Chinese exam. A lot of the ethnic minorities are very fluent in speaking, but when it comes to writing, it's very difficult.
Here's what I don't understand, though. Some of the civil service jobs do not require reading or writing Chinese for their reports. Let's say police. You can write your reports in Chinese or English.
Yes.
Right? You can, even when you receive a ticket, sometimes it's only in English because that is more clearer about the offense and the time and what happened.
I think the ticket is bilingual.
Yeah, it's bilingual, but still, you can still go with just the English, right? Why is that requirement there or even firefighters? I don't see why you need to read Chinese to do a job as rescuing fire. You have to communicate with the person in distress.
Exactly.
Not, could you pass me a note? I need to read what's wrong. That's not going to happen most likely. And usually police officers are partnered with someone, so it's not hard to partner with a Cantonese local with their ethnic minority partner, and they can also be a advantage to areas that need people like Tsim Sha Tsui, Yuen Long now, and Central, all these areas where there's more of the ethnic minorities. But it seems suspicious that it's more xenophobia than it is that this is a real requirement for certain jobs in the civil service. Or am I just overblowing that situation?
No, but we also don't want to just confine ethnic minorities into specific areas, like you say, Yuen Long, Tsim Sha Tsui, or
I'm just
Central,
saying it'd be an advantage to have them because sometimes there's a loss in communication between the situation because the person's an ethnic minority that's in distress and the police officer, they're having trouble communicating. But if they could communicate in their mother tongue, might be better.
Yeah, the police department, they are now recruiting police liaison officers Yeah, but it boils down to their language ability. So if the government and the thing is, you have to speak Cantonese because we use Cantonese,
Sure.
and it's just logical for the government to say you need to know Cantonese, you need to speak, and perhaps write a bit.
Speak is a must. I agree with you. But the
Yes.
reading and writing, I think, is a requirement there that keeps them out in a way.
Yes.
I don't know if it's on purpose or not, because that's total conjecture. I have no proof of that. But if you ask people on the street, they will say it seems like they're purposely trying to keep ethnic minorities away from getting into
Well,
the
that's
civil
what
service.
we think, and we've been fighting
Yeah.
very hard, even for access to services, simply access to education information, housing information, like public housing information. A lot of these things, they are available in printed copies in Chinese. But if you want to search for just English, I'm not talking about other languages,
Right.
where in a multicultural country, in Canada or
And
Australia,
English is an official language
yeah,
here.
very, very important information would be printed in different country languages.
Right.
Right. And here, English and Chinese are the official languages.
Right.
But a lot of the printed matters, they're only in Chinese. And they're expected, so non-Chinese speaking reading people would be expected to go on the internet to download the information.
And if they're elderly and they
exactly,
can't
and if they're elderly,
download,
if they don't have internet access,
they're out of luck.
Yeah, they can't
So that-
access to such information.
And has this been brought up at all?
Yes.
And what is their response?
They will try and fix it. And
how long has that been?
Well, actually, the Employment Bureau has been working hard. They're translating some of these important information
that's good.
into different languages, like
Right.
into Urdu, Hindi,
Yeah.
Nepali. Yeah,
And
but still, it's a long way to go.
right.
It's a long way to go,
But to
and
start,
we feel it's.
we could say.
Yeah, because the government has to do something. If the government do not include them in their policy making, then it's very difficult.
Vicky, you have any questions?
And
No, I mean just the idea of language really, because I remember when I'm studying at HKU, and I remember when I first joined. I went to a student union meeting, and I remembered it was all entirely done in Cantonese. Now my Cantonese is okay. At the time, it wasn't amazing, so I needed someone to help me translate in English, and a lot of criticism, because bearing in mind a university like HKU, the vast majority of their students come from mainland China. Then the second largest amount is American, followed by South Koreans. Actual local Hong Kong students account for a very, very small percentage of the student population, yet everything at the student union is done entirely in Cantonese. So if you've got like a very small Cantonese speaking population in your student body, but the vast majority don't speak Cantonese, you're locking out quite a lot of people from being engaged with the student union process. So.
Right, exactly. And language barrier is a real big deterrent to integrating into the Hong Kong society.
How long have you been in this position at Unison now?
It's only been 6 months.
So only been 6 months, and before you was Fermi Wong.
Yes.
And she's been fighting
And
for
she's been
years
fighting
and
for
years.
years.
And you know, I never spoken to her directly, but I know people that have worked with her and stuff. And basically, her answer was the government talking to them, trying to get them something to do, is like banging your head on a wall. But it seems that this government seems to be slightly more receptive to the ethnic minority issue.
Yeah, I have to say it's a little bit more receptive. They have put in resources for education, though we don't know if it's efficiently and effectively done. And they have looked into employment, and the next thing we're going to follow up closely is the Civil Service Bureau.
Good.
Because they hire a large percentage of
I believe it's Hong
people
Kong's
in
biggest
Hong Kong.
employer.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would be a boon to students that are qualified to get in there, but depends on which job and what's required and all that.
Yes, and we're very concerned about if free kindergarten is available, this free kindergarten issue.
Right.
Because as you said, why don't we just throw kids into kindergartens starting from their young age
Exactly.
and learn the language, learn Cantonese.
Right.
Because then you have you're surrounded by children
Yeah.
speaking the same language. So we're really concerned about free kindergarten, how the admission process and the criteria is for different kindergartens. Because for now, we do see some discrimination, although the kindergartens would not admit, because if we just pick up the phone and randomly call a couple of kindergartens, which are predominantly Chinese populated school kindergartens, they would right off the back say, "Oh, you can't speak Chinese. You can't speak Cantonese. We don't take students who can't speak Cantonese." So this is right off the back. It's discrimination.
Right.
Kindergarten is the first step.
And the door's shut on them right there.
Right there. Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of these, a lot of our ethnic minority users, they have to go to kindergartens that are mostly, say, Nepali,
Right.
mostly Hindis,
Right.
English kindergartens, which are very expensive, because the local kindergartens, the Chinese kindergartens, just wouldn't take them.
And this causes the institutional and hereditary poverty that we're seeing.
Exactly.
Because their parents can't get the job to send them to a better school, like the English kindergarten, and then the local kindergarten won't accept them, and then they have to send them to more of their own ethnic kindergartens that won't teach them.
Right, in kindergarten, because if you do not have a solid background, a solid foundation of Cantonese in kindergarten, then parents are very they're afraid to put them into mainstream Chinese schools or even mainstream schools. So what they do is, okay, because my friend A is going to this school, my cousin B is going to this school, I'm going to put my child in the same school.
Right.
So it's a vicious cycle. That's why all those schools have over 90% of student population with non-ethnic Chinese. And that creates the segregation issue.
Yeah, because even myself being in Canada, it's not like, well, I English was always fine for me, but if I wasn't, I have other students in my class, their English was so-so because they were from another country. It's not like they separated them from us. They put them in our class. They made them go through the same motions. I had to learn French.
Yes.
That's another total alien language. But they did not shun me or put me in a different school or class or anything like that.
Right.
And I think that this government, could you imagine if the executive government's children who all study overseas were sent to the UK and then said, sorry, we don't think your English is that good, so we're going to send you to this third-party school somewhere else. It wouldn't happen. You have to come in, you have to learn the language, and you must, and we'll do our best to help you integrate that. That's what's missing, is that they're not doing their best. Now, how does racism at all play into ethnic minorities here at all? I know it's a rhetorical question, but I'll let you answer that anyways.
It is not. It's supposedly not allowed because we have the race discrimination ordinance, and if you discriminate a person based on race, then you could be prosecuted and penalized. But there are situations in Hong Kong that people still blatantly discriminate ethnic minorities. Take, for example, the rental of rental of houses or apartments and flats. We've got a lot of complaints from our clients saying whether they go to the landlord or they go through an agent, once they see you are non-ethnic Chinese, they turn you at the door. They said, well, my client or my landlord, the landlord doesn't want to rent to any Indians, Pakistanis, Filipinos.
Is there a specific reason for that?
No.
Or it's just you're this race and I don't want you to...
No, because there are some wrong perceptions on ethnic minorities. It could be their culture is very different from Chinese people, their religion, their
flat will smell like curry.
Yes, that
I know, because I've heard this as well. It's real, in the city.
Right, but not everybody live like that, and they should at least go through the application and see if the person is
eligible or not. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I mean, I don't know, curry, stinky tofu. That's a hard toss-up,
Exactly.
right? But
Exactly.
still, both.
Yeah.
It's not like you should be discriminated for cooking a certain type of food. Now, if they're after you're done your lease, there is a problem with that. You can deal with it. Hold their security deposit for cleaning, and there's legal ways to deal with these
Right.
situations. But you can't just say, "Well, I think you're going to stink up the joint, so I
Yeah.
think I'm not going to rent to you from the beginning."
Exactly. So housing is a big problem for ethnic minorities in Hong Kong.
So where do they end up
They're-
usually then? Subdivided
they're
flats?
Subdivided flats, and their family is usually quite big. Like
yeah.
it's usually more than 2 kids. I'm not being. I shouldn't be being very general here.
No,
but
it's true.
but there are larger
ethnic
families.
minorities usually have larger families
Yeah.
in the city, especially. Yes.
Yeah, and then the time for them to wait for a suitable public housing, it's longer because there are fewer units these days with
For larger
that
families?
accommodate larger families. So the waiting time is longer.
Mm-hmm.
But the government hasn't thought of any brighter way or smarter ideas.
But have people come into Unison and given you stories of just blatant racism, or do they feel that they're just or subtle racism? Because I just getting on a bus, you can feel these
Yes.
subtle
Yes.
racism in the city. It's real.
They don't want
or
to
sitting
sit
in the
next to
MTR.
you, and
yeah.
even there is an empty seat. Right
Or
next to
they'll
you
take the
and-
final empty seat next to you. It's
Right.
real.
Yes,
and it
is.
makes no
It is.
sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it the culture? Is it some
It's-
sort of
No, we
institutional
think the
problem?
People in Hong Kong are not culturally sensitive enough.
Hmm.
Yeah. When you ask me about cases of either blatant discrimination or indirect, we have many users. We actually have many users coming to complain about difficulty in opening a bank account
Yeah.
or applying for credit cards. Once they see your last name, it's always a delayed process and a longer process. If not, then you don't get it, period. Yeah,
Right.
you just don't get it. So we've got cases like you're in Hong Kong, you would be able to tell me. Orientation week, they always have these credit cards application
Oh, goodness.
booths, right?
Yeah.
Luring students to
Free
go and
credit.
apply.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most students get it very easily.
Sure.
But we have cases of ethnic minority students saying it's been taking 4 months. And it's not. I haven't got a card issued to me. Asking why, and they said, "Well, you have to come in and give your student card." I mean, during your application, have you ever had to give them a photocopy of your student card?
I don't actually own a credit card.
Oh, all right.
Well,
but
I have my own credit card with HSBC, but I don't have a credit card that I use here because I only use it for very big exchanges.
right.
But
But
them-
generally, yeah, it's just
Yeah, you apply for a credit card, you fill in all the information, and then they do the credit checking. And when our client asked about his friends, they said, "No, we don't have to give a student card. Why?" Yeah, and they were asked. He was asked for a student card. He was asked for many more other information that his fellow Chinese friends don't require.
And what was the excuse given for the delay from the credit card company?
It's the process.
It's
It's
the
a procedure.
A 4-month procedure for a
Yes,
credit card.
For a credit card. Yes.
That's ridiculous.
And same with bank accounts. You walk in, immediately they say, "Oh, well, why don't you try another bank?" It's very difficult. It will take a long time to process the opening.
What do they
And-
think that's going to happen? Rampant fraud just because you're not just because you're an ethnic minority? I don't understand why they wouldn't want
Well,
to
I
open.
understand from the banking point of view, there are like anti-money laundering ordinances, and in countries like Canada and the States, there are some sensitive countries.
Sure.
But if you have a Hong Kong ID card, you have an employer's letter
Yeah.
saying you're working here,
Yeah.
and I just need a bank account
Yeah.
for salary
Yeah.
purpose. I think
it.
that's
Yeah.
very, very clear enough.
Yes.
And if you want to ask more questions for more information, that's okay. But right off, they don't ask for such information. They said, it's probably going to take a long time. Why don't you just try another bank? And
From
these are with
personal-
major banks in Hong Kong.
Personal experience, I've never dealt with that with banks or credit cards. Everything's been processed clearly. But I do know people that have gone through these types of issues with banks or housing. That was another one where the application was only in Chinese.
Yes.
And
Do you have a child?
yes, I do. Yeah, and
How old is he?
He's just under 2, and
okay. So not yet for kindergarten.
Not
or
yet for
playgroup
kindergarten.
yet.
But the thing is because of my work and everything, I will be able to afford him a better, I know it sounds kind of bad or elitist in a certain way, but I can afford to send him to an English-speaking kindergarten.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine if I wasn't, and I don't think it's fair that if I couldn't, I'd be facing all these obstacles just because I could not speak the language fluently. I can speak it, but it's not totally fluent, right? Because of my business, I have to speak some of it.
Right.
And being that English is the second official language, it shouldn't be an issue. I should be able to speak one or the other. Now, if I can't speak both, then I can understand the big language issues. But I just hope that groups like yours and the Hong Kong, I will give C.Y. Leung the credit that he is doing something that the last administrations were not. And if anybody wants to help volunteer,
But I think more work should be done for ethnic minorities.
and they can go to unison.org.hk,
Yes.
get more information.
Right.
And thank you, Phyllis,
Thank you
for
very
coming
much,
in.
Harminda. Thank you,
And
Vicky.
Vicky and I couldn't decide on a shame on you. So there won't be one this week for the first time. We just could not decide, and there wasn't good candidates anyway. So we'll just end the show here. Key will be back next week. So thank you for watching the show. Goodbye.